She sat across from me at the old mill, a confident, almost practiced smile on her face. Her hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless, like she was heading into a job interview, or maybe closing some multi-million-dollar deal. She launched into this whole speech about how much she'd grown these past few months, how she'd learned what really mattered, how she was finally ready for our future. The house, the engagement, the kids. All laid out like a carefully crafted business proposal, completely unaware that the deal was off the table, and had been for a very long time. To understand how we got to that absurd moment, you have to go back to the beginning. Ryan, my best friend, and I met Melissa through mutual friends at some random barbecue in Harmony Springs. Everyone else was coupled up, but Melissa and I were both happily single, just living our lives. Honestly, it felt like fate. We clicked immediately. No drama, no baggage, just two normal people finding common ground. The first 3 years? They were everything you'd want. We explored state parks, cooked dinner together on weekends, had this sweet routine where she'd make coffee in bed, and I'd surprise her with concert tickets or spontaneous road trips to different towns. We talked about getting a dog, buying a house with a yard, the whole future thing. And I started looking at rings, because it felt right. Then, around year 3, something shifted. She started spending more time scrolling through social media, comparing our quiet nights into her friends' club photos and festival stories. She'd show me posts from people we barely knew, going on about how they were really living and how we should be doing more exciting stuff. So, I tried. I really did. I planned weekend getaways, signed us up for rock climbing, suggested salsa dancing, but nothing seemed to fill whatever void had opened up for her. Her younger sister, Ashley, started getting in her ear constantly, telling her she was wasting her 20s, that she needed to experience everything before committing. And her coworker, Chloe, became this terrible influence, dragging her to girls' nights that turned into all-nighters at clubs I'd never even heard of. Chloe was only 23 and lived like commitment was a disease, always posting about being wild and free. And suddenly, Melissa started echoing that exact same energy. Ryan saw it coming from a mile away. He pulled me aside one night and told me she was treating me like a backup plan. But I didn't want to believe it. We'd built something real, I thought. Her birthday that year should have been my wake-up call. I made reservations at the old mill, where we'd had our first date, got tickets to see her favorite band, the whole romantic gesture. But she spent the entire dinner on her phone, barely touching her food, giving me one-word answers. When I showed her the concert tickets, she just smiled politely and said, "Oh, that's sweet, but I already made plans with the girls," like I was some acquaintance she needed to let down easy. I drove home alone that night while she went out and didn't come back until 4 a.m, passing out on the couch, still in her club clothes. The next morning, she acted like everything was fine, even thanked me for the nice evening, like we'd actually spent it together. Have you ever felt invisible to someone you love? Then came her company party about a month later. That's when I truly felt it. She used to introduce me as her boyfriend with this proud smile. But this time, when someone asked who I was, she just casually said, "Oh, this is David." And when they pushed about how long we'd been together, she laughed it off, saying, "We're not really labeling anything." Right in front of me. Like I was in on the joke. There was this guy there, Jake, from her department, a total show-off type who talked about skydiving and motorcycle trips. And she was eating it up, laughing at his stories, touching his arm, completely forgetting I existed. On the drive home, I asked about him, trying to keep my voice casual. She got this dreamy look and said, "He's just so adventurous. You know, being around him makes me feel like I haven't really lived yet." Instead of calling out how messed up that was, I went home and started Googling extreme sports, like I could fix myself into being interesting enough. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. She sat me down with that serious face people make when they've been rehearsing a speech. She told me she hadn't really lived, that she needed to be free, that I was safe, but she wanted to have fun before settling into boring couple life. Then she actually suggested we take a break for 6 to 12 months so she could explore and come back without regrets. I just stared at her, processing what she was really saying. She wanted to test drive other guys while keeping me on hold as her guaranteed backup. When I repeated her own words back to her, asking if I understood correctly, she got uncomfortable but nodded. I looked at her for a long moment and said, "Okay, take all the time you need." And I watched her face fall because she'd clearly expected me to fight, to beg, to negotiate terms like this was some kind of business deal. She packed her stuff that same night, moving in with Ashley temporarily, talking about needing space. After she left, I sat in the quiet apartment we'd shared and pulled that ring box out of my drawer. I drove to the jewelry store the next morning and returned it. Got my money back. I didn't even feel sad about it anymore, just tired. Ryan came over that night. We didn't talk much. He just hung out, playing video games, like nothing happened. And somehow, that was exactly what I needed. Sitting there in the silence, after 4 years of trying to be enough, I realized something. I wasn't her person. I was her consolation prize. The guy she'd settle for after she finished shopping around. She texted me 3 days later, asking how I was doing with a sad emoji. I responded with 2 words, "I'm good." No explanation, no emotion. Apparently, that wasn't what she wanted to hear, because she didn't text again for a week. I looked at our photos on my phone one last time. All those smiling moments that felt real. I wondered if she'd been planning this exit the whole time, or if Ashley and Chloe really had convinced her the grass was greener. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. I'd made my choice the second she made me optional. I wasn't going to be anyone's maybe, anyone's safety net, anyone's plan B, waiting in the wings while they figured out if they could do better. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The first week after she left was weird. I kept expecting her to walk through the door or text me some long apology. But instead, there was just silence. And this strange sense of relief that I didn't have to perform anymore. Ryan didn't give me any speeches about moving on. He just showed up with pizza and stayed until I felt like a human again. I took the money from returning that ring and built myself a high-end gaming setup, the kind I'd always wanted but never bought because we were supposedly saving for our future. Ryan helped me put it together, making jokes, but I could tell he was genuinely happy to see me doing something for myself. 2 weeks in, I did something I'd been thinking about for years. I went to the animal shelter and adopted Buster, a rescue mix who'd been there for months because he was too energetic for most people. Suddenly, my entire routine changed. I had to wake up early for walks, come home at reasonable hours, actually leave my apartment instead of rotting on the couch. Honestly, that dog saved me from spiraling. The morning walks turned into longer hikes on weekends. I started noticing trails I'd driven past 100 times, and Buster would go crazy exploring every new path like it was the greatest adventure in the world. I needed something more, though, something to get the anger and frustration out of my system. So, I joined Ironclad Boxing across town, which Ryan had mentioned. The coach was a no-nonsense guy who didn't care about your feelings or your backstory. He just pointed at the heavy bag and told you to work. And that's exactly what I needed. I started going 3 times a week, then 4, then 5, learning proper form, building actual muscle, feeling my body get stronger while my head got clearer. The gym became my therapy. Every punch was me letting go of another piece of the person I'd been trying to be for her, the guy who constantly wondered if he was exciting enough, or adventurous enough, or whatever enough. I fixed my diet, started meal prepping, got serious about sleep. I built this whole routine that had nothing to do with impressing anyone and everything to do with respecting myself. Meanwhile, Melissa was living her best life all over social media, posting stories from clubs and bars, photos with people I'd never seen before, captions about freedom and finding herself. But if you looked close, you could see the desperation in it. Like she was trying to convince everyone, including herself, that she was happy. Ryan would send me screenshots sometimes when she posted something particularly ridiculous, and we'd laugh about it. But honestly, I stopped checking her profiles after the first month because I had better things to do. She went through guys like they were rental cars. First, there was Jake, the adventure guy from her office, who turned out to be a total player, flirting with everyone. Then came some finance bro who looked good in photos but apparently had a controlling streak and an ego the size of a small country. After that was some artist type who talked about open relationships but really just wanted to sleep around while she stayed loyal. I heard through mutual friends that he was crashing at her place, eating her food, contributing nothing. Her friend group started falling apart too. Chloe apparently hooked up with one of the guys Melissa was seeing, and suddenly they weren't posting together anymore. Around month 3, she started texting me again. Nothing serious at first. Just casual messages asking how I was doing, or saying she saw something that reminded her of our time together. I'd respond politely but briefly, because I genuinely was busy with my actual life. You could tell it threw her off that I wasn't sitting by my phone, waiting for her to come back, that I had things going on and wasn't available for her emotional support whenever she felt nostalgic. I met Sarah completely by accident when I brought Buster in for his checkup at Oakwood Animal Clinic near my apartment. She was the vet who examined him, super professional and knowledgeable, but also so warm with the animals. And Buster immediately loved her, which was rare. We started talking about dog training and hiking trails. She mentioned she took her own dog out to Greenwood Falls State Park every weekend. So, naturally, I suggested we go together sometime. It wasn't even romantic at first, just 2 dog owners hanging out on trails. But I noticed how easy it was to be around her, how she didn't play games or test me or compare our quiet moments to someone else's highlight reel. She had her own career, her own apartment, her own fully formed life, and she wasn't looking for someone to complete her or make her feel alive. She just enjoyed my company for what it was. We started seeing each other more regularly, grabbing coffee after hikes, having dinner at her place, where our dogs would play while we cooked together. It felt healthy in a way I'd forgotten relationships could feel. No tests, no hoops to jump through, no wondering if I was measuring up. Just 2 adults who liked each other, spending time together. Sarah thought my dedication to boxing and fitness was attractive, not boring. She appreciated that I had discipline and goals, instead of wishing I was more spontaneous or reckless. About 4 months after the breakup, I posted a photo on Instagram from a weekend hiking trip. Just me and Sarah and both our dogs on this overlook with a great view. Nothing dramatic or showy, just a nice moment. Melissa saw it within minutes, and my phone blew up with text messages asking who that was. Was I seeing someone? Was this just a rebound? How could I move on so fast? Like she had any right to question my life after what she'd done. She sent paragraphs about how we had history, how I was throwing away for years, and how this new person couldn't possibly understand me the way she did. I just let her spiral, because responding would only feed into it. Ryan told me to screenshot everything, just in case things got weird. Sarah was completely unbothered by the whole thing. She knew the situation and wasn't threatened, because she was secure in herself. I realized somewhere in all of this that I'd become a completely different person than the guy who begged for scraps of attention and tried to turn himself into someone more exciting. I had my dog, my routine, my boxing, my actual healthy relationship with someone who chose me first. Not after testing the market. Melissa kept texting sporadically, switching between anger and nostalgia. But I kept my responses minimal, and eventually she got the message that I wasn't her backup plan anymore. One night I was cooking dinner at Sarah's place, and she asked me if I ever regretted how things ended with Melissa. And I realized I didn't. Not even a little bit. Because that breakup had forced me to build a life I actually wanted, instead of one I thought I was supposed to want. Melissa had been so sure I'd be waiting when she finished exploring. So confident that safe and boring me would be right there, ready to lock her down. But she'd misunderstood something fundamental. A break isn't a pause button. It's not a save point in a video game where you can go off and do whatever, then reload to where you left off. It's an ending. A door closing. And I'd walked through a different door entirely while she was out there discovering that the grass isn't greener. It's just different grass with different problems. That night, after Sarah fell asleep, I sat on her couch with both dogs at my feet and thought about the ring I'd almost given to someone who saw me as a settlement. And I felt nothing but gratitude that she'd been honest enough to show me who she really was before I'd made that mistake permanent. Back to the old mill. She finished her pitch, still smiling expectantly, waiting for me to be relieved or grateful that she'd finally decided I was good enough. I felt absolutely nothing, except maybe a distant curiosity about how disconnected from reality she'd become. When she finally stopped talking, I took a breath and said, "You've got this wrong. I wasn't waiting for you." I watched her face change as the words sank in. I told her I was with someone else now. Someone who'd chosen me from day one, without needing to test other options first. Someone who didn't need to go shopping around before deciding I was worth keeping. Her whole expression shifted from confident to confused to angry in about 5 seconds. Suddenly, she was asking who this person was. How long had this been going on? Was I doing this just to hurt her? Was this some rebound thing? She started tearing down Sarah without even knowing her, calling her basic, saying she couldn't possibly understand our connection, bringing up inside jokes and memories like they were evidence in a court case. She actually said we had history, real history, and that had to mean more than some new fling. I let her finish and then said, "Here's the thing, though. You didn't choose me. You chose to keep your options open." I explained that I wasn't a backup plan or a safety net or a guaranteed fallback option. She tried to argue that it wasn't like that she just needed time to be sure, that everyone has doubts. But I cut through all of it and told her that her honesty was actually the kindest thing she'd ever done, because it showed me exactly where I stood. The conversation ended with her oscillating between anger and tears, trying every emotional angle she could think of. But I stayed calm and just kept repeating that we were done, and I'd moved on. She left the restaurant looking shell-shocked, like she genuinely couldn't process that her plan hadn't worked, and I went home feeling lighter than I had in years. The text messages started hitting my phone that same night. Long paragraphs about how I was making a mistake, how I'd regret this, how we were meant to be together, and I was just scared of giving her another chance. Then came the sad texts about how she couldn't eat or sleep, how her family was worried about her, how I'd broken her in ways she didn't know she could break. Full manipulation mode, trying to guilt me into responding. I didn't reply to any of it, just let her send her messages into the void, and my silence seemed to make everything worse. She started watching my Instagram and other social media obsessively, viewing my stories within seconds of posting. I noticed through mutual friends that she created fake accounts to get around the fact that I'd blocked her main profile on everything. The fake accounts would leave weird comments on Sarah's public posts. Nothing directly threatening, but definitely passive-aggressive. Little digs that were just plausible enough to seem innocent. Then it escalated into real-world stuff. She started showing up places she knew I'd be, the coffee shop near Ironclad Boxing, the park where I walked Buster, always with some excuse about how she was just in the neighborhood. People we both knew started telling me she was asking questions about Sarah, where she worked, where she lived, what kind of person she was, fishing for information under the guise of just being curious. The final straw came when she actually went to Oakwood Animal Clinic, Sarah's vet office, pretending she needed a consultation for a pet she didn't have, asking the receptionist questions, trying to get a look at Sarah's schedule. Sarah called me after that incident, pretty shaken up, because this wasn't just online drama anymore. This was someone actively trying to insert themselves into her workplace and her life. Ryan had been telling me to document everything for weeks, so I had folders full of screenshots, saved voicemails, timestamps of when she'd shown up at various locations. And Sarah had started keeping records, too. We filed for a restraining order. Honestly, I thought maybe that would wake her up, make her realize how far she'd gone. But she showed up to the court hearing looking exhausted and defeated, trying to play the victim and claimed she was just trying to get closure. The judge wasn't buying it, looked at the evidence we presented, the pattern of escalating behavior, and granted a 1-year no-contact order right there. After that, she finally seemed to disappear. Mutual friends said she'd moved back to Maple Creek or maybe to Burlington. And for the first time in months, I could breathe without wondering when she'd pop up next. Sarah and I moved in together about 8 months after we'd started dating. Nothing rushed or dramatic, just a natural progression that made sense for where we were. I proposed to her on a hiking trail, the same one where we'd had our first dog walking date. No elaborate plan or public spectacle, just me and her and our dogs, and a ring I'd actually chosen for the right person this time. Ryan was genuinely happy for me, made jokes about how I'd leveled up in every possible way. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. Life got quiet in the best way possible. No chaos, no drama, no wondering if I was enough or if someone better was waiting around the corner. Just over a year after the restraining order was granted, after it had expired, I got a text from an unknown number with just 2 words, "I'm sorry." I looked at it for maybe 5 seconds before deleting it without responding. I don't hate Melissa, and I don't spend time thinking about her. I genuinely hope she figures out whatever she needs to figure out and finds some peace. But she's not going to find it with me. Not as her backup plan, not as her safe option, not as the guy she settles for when everything else falls apart. I'm building a life with someone who wanted me from the start. Who sees my stability as a strength instead of a boring default. Who doesn't need to explore other options to know what she has. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is show you who they really are before you make a permanent mistake. And looking back now, I'm grateful Melissa was honest enough to do that. Even if her timing and methods were awful, she gave me all the freedom she wanted. And I used it to build something better, something real, something that didn't require me to audition for the role of boyfriend or wait around hoping to be chosen. That's the thing about being someone's plan B. Once you realize that's what you are, the only move is to walk away and find someone for whom you're plan A. And I did exactly that. So, here's what this story teaches us. If someone asks you to wait while they figure out if you're good enough, the answer should always be no. You deserve someone who knows your worth immediately, not someone who needs to comparison shop before settling. Don't be someone's maybe. Be someone's absolute yes from the start, because that's the only kind of love worth having. What would you have done when she came back to make her pitch?